Thank you, everybody, for joining us today about continuous driver monitoring. Why are we doing this webinar today? Well, 10% of your drivers are responsible for about 40% of your crashes, and you can start proactively identifying those risks before they result in a crash with continuous driver monitoring. A few housekeeping items we want to go through before we get started. All of the attendees will receive a copy of the slides, and attendees will receive a recording of the webinar, hopefully by Monday at the latest. And we encourage you to ask questions in the comment sections, and we will reply to all of them after the webinar is over. And please let us know how we did in the post-webinar survey. And we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to hand it off to Steve Howell, our AVP of DISA Transportation Compliance. Steve?
Thank you so much, Ashley, and welcome everyone to today's webinar called DISA's Continuous Driver Monitoring and Controlling Foreseeable Risk. So, when I read that title, two words immediately jump out at me: monitoring and risk. Those are such important words when we consider the industries we're in and the relationship of compliance and safety. If you think about the challenges we face today, it's critical to consider ways to balance and mitigate that risk. Whoever would have thought that that pandemic could affect our lives and our employees' lives as it has? These times reinforce what's most important of our assets, which is really our employees and our drivers. So how could you become a better company? One way is to protect your workforce and yourself, which will enable you to become even safer and more profitable as a business. Hence the importance of driver monitoring. So now, whenever I attend webinars, I always ask myself, what am I going to get out of this discussion? For today, you'll learn a little bit about DISA and Samba safety too, but don't worry, it'll be high level, and then we'll tackle the risk, the impact, and then the solutions by which driver monitoring can really help you out. We'll then conclude the webinar with a case study or two and further support the value of driver monitoring applied in our industries. So now, let's begin. So who is DISA? Well, often we hear who and what does DISA do? That's because we are in so many different critical places within our energy and transportation industry that it can get a little confusing, especially with all the acquisition companies we've gained over the years. But feel free to visit our website to see more of the evolution of our company. However, I like to simply put it and state that we are an innovator, a technology and people company implementing a suite of compliance solutions. Yes, I use the word people. And that's because we're here to serve and deliver an unexpectedly high level of customer service intended to wow our clients. Another way to look at it, we're simply keeping people safer. But all this didn't happen overnight. So over 34 years plus, we have learned a lot. We keep listening and growing. And in return, we continue to share our solutions. For example, if you look at our transportation service and our product and service portfolio, we consist of background checks, DQ files, drug and alcohol programs, occupational health programs, physical exams, fit tests, transportation compliance, looking at license and permitting, fuel tax, and so on. So yes, we strive to provide the most complete and holistic portfolio of compliance products. And we also serve a vast array of different clients, from single owner operators to national carriers with 10,000 plus drivers. And now we are extremely pleased to offer our DISA driver monitoring program with our partner, Samba Safety. We truly formed an incredible partnership based on similar ideologies, a passion for quality and service. So our goal here is to really leverage our combined technology expertise to provide a seamless experience, and that makes DISA driver monitoring program so special. So, and by the way, my contact information will be posted at the end. So if you want to learn more about other services, again, please feel free to reach out. But let's just jump right into today's topic. So if we look at some of the headwinds, right? Let's pose a question. Do we face challenges in the transportation industry? And the answer is absolutely yes. Sure we do. And there's a lot of them. For instance, FMCSA Clearinghouse. Yes, ultimately it will serve the industry well, but we all know the recent growing pains when it was launched on January 6th this year, and it continues. And by the way, we have done different webinars on it, and we've done one called the Doghouse or the Clearinghouse. Gives you a little indication. So, well, we also have ELD mandate, which continues to be another added requirement that's affecting our industry and holding us more accountable. And then we're affected by outside forces like increased road congestion with bottlenecks, work zones, traffic control devices. We've seen an 80% increase in congestion in the past few decades. And then you have the distracted driving is another one. And I think it was in 2018, just about 3,000 lives were lost and so on. So you get the picture here. All these are big distractions, but what's truly important is focusing on the overall health of our organization. And that's understanding the current state and the future state of your operations is critical to foreseeing upcoming challenges and hurdles. For example, I trust you don't want unexpected breakdowns on the road. So what do? You start to monitor and manage your maintenance records. But what do you do about drivers? Is it just a yearly MVR check? Which raises the next question. Have you ever looked at the impact of good drivers and bad drivers? And so we kind of looked at it, and for starters, we broke it down into three main buckets. You have your safety and compliance, you have your brand protection, and you have your risk and cost. Yes, these make sense, but it can be further broken down into 12 critical impacts. For example, regarding safety and insurance, the effects of poor safety or rising insurance costs force companies like Celadon, New England Motor Freight, Falcon, and many more in 2019 to close their doors. Negative press, look at that one. Remember the Kevin Hart and Walmart situation. Hey, we love to see our names on the trucks when things are good, but very scary when things go wrong. So all these can lead to employee retention and recruitment issues too. So if you look at data from ATA showing rates of 89% for large turnover rate, 89% for higher carriers, and 73% for smaller for higher carriers. So that's a lot of recruiting going on. So no one of these are more or less important, but any one of these can really ruin a business or an individual. Therefore, it really behooves us to learn and monitor those behaviors which can mitigate these impacts. Now let's get more granular on the value of the driver monitoring program. What we're speaking of is a continuous driver monitoring that automatically alerts you when an employee driving on behalf of your company receives a negative violation. You receive insight on up-to-date motor vehicle records, helping you better understand who's behind that wheel. A standard MVR, a snapshot of time of the current record, right? But what happens tomorrow and the rest of the 364 days of the year? That's what we call the visibility gap, which is risk, which can be monitored. And yes, those are the two important words that I mentioned earlier. So in turn, we're seeking to increase employee retention. How? By the intervention and enforcing your driver safety policies. So ultimately, going back to what I mentioned at the beginning, protect your company, your employees, and basically our communities. So at this point, I think it'd be a perfect time to hand off to our very special partner, Samba Safety, and Stephanie Zeller. As we are both leaders in the industry, we join forces to offer a best-in-class monitoring solution. So without further ado, our partner, our subject matter expert, Stephanie of Samba. So it's all yours. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Zeller. First of all, thank you, Ashley, Steve, and DISA team for inviting me to share this exciting program with you. And thank you to everyone here for your interest in becoming more proactive from a safety and risk perspective. I have no doubt this solution will benefit all of you and impact your business in at least one of the three buckets Steve just described. So, excuse me. Sorry about that. So driving behavior is really where it all begins. Bad behavior results in violations, citations, and ultimately crashes. In fact, 94% of crashes are the result of human behavior. 3 to 5% of drivers have an invalid license and are more likely to be involved in a crash. Increased vehicle technology is simply not enough to be contributing to inattentive driving. And of course, alcohol is a large contributor to crashes as well. Undoubtedly, something needs to be done to protect the safety of our employees and communities. So staying in compliance is a high priority for most companies because the alternative is extremely expensive and turnover rates are at an all-time high. However, companies are spending far too much time trying to manage this. By implementing a solution like continuous monitoring, employers are relieved of the administrative burden and costs associated with their efforts to stay compliant, while also taking proactive intervention measures to retain those good drivers. By reducing crashes, businesses experience a decrease in auto repair and bodily injury costs. Additionally, fewer claims result in decreased insurance premiums, which is why so many insurance providers are such strong advocates of this new best practice. In fact, in some cases, we've seen them even mandate that their clients enroll in driver monitoring prior to renewal. In today's litigious society, pulling static MVRs, just like Steve mentioned, it's just not good enough. You can miss relevant information those other 364 days, which exposes companies to tremendous risk. Financing and participation in litigation funding is increasing every year, and 3 in 5 of those lawsuits are won by the plaintiff. Driving is proven to be the highest risk employers face, so it's absolutely essential to implement some type of risk management solution. In today's unpredictable world, as we all know, with great amount of uncertainty, especially during this time of crisis with COVID-19, it's imperative to focus on the risk you can control. When you pull static MVRs on an annual or even quarterly basis, many things can happen in between, leaving you in the dark. For example, you pull an MVR on January 1st, 2 weeks later, that driver may get a speeding ticket. Then fast forward 3 months later, they receive a DUI, which of course suspends their license. Now, not surprisingly, 4 months later, this high-risk driver may get into a crash. As their employer, did you know about any of these events prior to the next MVR pull on the next January or the next year? Absolutely not. But could you have? Yes. And as Steve mentioned, this is what we call the visibility gap. So some companies take the approach that they can't be held liable for something they're not aware of. However, when it comes to negligent entrustment, the standard is that the company should have known. Pulling a pre-hire MVR can eliminate prospective employees who have a poor driving record, but it does not inform an employer if a record changes after that pull date. So drivers may be involved in accidents, or they may get a ticket off the clock. It's really important to know these changes that occur. If MVRs are not being monitored and a driver causes an accident, a negligent entrustment case will be nearly impossible to win. Major nuclear judgment settlements range in the millions and hundreds of millions of dollars paid out. So it's better to have a standard policy that is scrutinized as a means to implement driver safety protocols and to identify individuals who fall outside that policy rather than none at all. A strong policy would include continuous driver monitoring of employee motor vehicle records and notifications to any changes on the record as they occur to avoid surprises and that negligent entrustment liability. Unfortunately, far too many companies come to me after this type of catastrophic loss saying, Stephanie, I'm kicking myself and really wish I had taken action and moved forward with this initiative that we discussed last year. But instead they took their chances and waited until something happened, which of course sparks a great deal of urgency to begin monitoring after the fact. As we mentioned before, data shows that only 10% of employees cause 40% of crash-related costs, which can be multiplied by 10 when you factor in the punitive damages associated with events such as auto repairs, workers' comp, legal fees, out-of-service vehicles, days lost, and insurance premiums, not to mention the negative impact on your brand's reputation. So think to yourself, do you know who those 10% are? And this is where driver monitoring can really help. Samba Safety's continuous driver monitoring platform called Corta empowers you with comprehensive data to proactively identify who should, and more importantly, who should not be driving. So our data scientists have discovered compelling stats confirming that this works. As Steve touched on earlier, after just 1 year of monitoring, our customers have a 22% reduction in monthly violations, 14% reduction in crashes, and 32% reduction in company risk profile events, meaning fewer drivers in that high risk and costly 10% that we discussed earlier. So the data proves Samba safety customers are successfully intervening when necessary to protect both their employees and their bottom line. The great news for all of you is that now DISA provides this tool, which will not only help mitigate the risk we've covered, but Samba Safety's platform also has a proven impact on FMCSA scores. 4 out of 5 carriers on the platform have no basic alerts. Carriers who are not on the platform, however, are more likely to have 2 or more basics above the intervention threshold. So big surprise here, most carriers with unsafe driver basic alerts are not using Samba Safety. So within the Corda platform, Samba's MVR monitoring solution is called Q License, and the functionality includes comprehensive license monitoring, standardized national MVRs, which are decoded so they're nice and easy to read, on-demand MVRs returned in seconds, tracking the status of a license, proactively managing MedCert expirations, and a driver score, which takes the guesswork out of risk assessment. Another program in the Corda platform is called Q Transportation, which manages CSA scores across DOTs and provides a single view of MVR and CSA activity. So one customer of ours, 9 Energy in Houston, was willing to share their experience. Like many, they struggled with managing 1,500 drivers and sought after a solution to proactively identify and intervene with high-risk drivers. Their insurance provider, Zurich, who's also a strategic partner of ours, recommended Samba Safety, which has simplified their process and alerted them on violations, big and small, both of which they want to know about. As this customer put it, a big aha moment for us was to notify managers when someone fell into the orange category. This led to proactive intervention, enabling managers to have a conversation and implement additional training with their driver, preventing future disqualification. Another customer, Dynamic Strategies in New Jersey, reported that monitoring has reduced their administrative time from 12 to 15 hours per week to just 3 hours, and has allowed them to retain good drivers by taking action before it's too late. As their safety director put it, I believe in 5 years, we'll be able to look back and say, wow, we're not having anybody on a suspended license. That is a game changer. So before I wrap up, hopefully you've all had a chance to reflect on what you're doing today and maybe thinking, could we be more proactive? Could we protect our employees and communities better? Ask yourself, what impact would it have on your business if one of your employees was driving on a suspended license and got in a crash? How would your insurance provider feel about you doing everything in your power to reduce claims? I'm sure some, if not all of you, or all of these things resonate with you. So hopefully you have a new perspective on being proactive rather than reactive. Now, before I hand it back over to Steve, I just want to thank everyone again for your time, and thank you to DISA for having me. I strongly encourage you all to consider moving in this direction and would love to work with you in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Stephanie, and of course, Samba Safety for the deeper dive into the driver monitoring. So at this point, I want to thank everyone who joined and would be delighted to work with you on implementing these important programs for your company. Remember, those two important words and the theme of monitoring and reducing risk. So by monitoring, we can reduce the risk and save you time, resources, and money. So my contact information is noted here. And with that, again, we will be responding to questions, getting them out, and following up. And with that, have a wonderful day, and thank you again for attending. And we look forward to speaking to you very soon. Thank you very much.